should be.
Good evening, everybody. I see we've got a full complement of officers. Welcome. Would you mind, officers, when you do address the committee, just stating your name and where you're from, please, just to remind us. Just go through the agenda then. Any apologies for absence, please? Yes.
You've got apologies from Councillor Holmes.
Any others, Steve? Okay. There are no late items, as far as I know, Stephen. Declarations of interest. There are none. Minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of October. I propose them. Can we have a seconder? Yes. Councillor Moore Hall. It takes us to item... Yes.
Thank you. So I just wanted to, I spoke to the leader earlier today, and I'm here because, just for the committee's information, Sam isn't here. She's unable to be here, and Alison's not here as well either. She's ill. So I'm here for that reason. But I also had a conversation with the leader this morning, and she's asked me to state the following. At the last meeting of Exec Scrutiny, there was some confusion about a report on libraries and the naming of the preferred bidder in the pink papers. The issue was resolved in time for the Cabinet meeting, but I've been asked to extend my apologies on behalf of officers to the Exec Scrutiny, because an apology was given to the Cabinet that evening by Sam for the confusion, and as I say, unfortunately Sam is unable to be at the meeting this evening. She would have given the apology, so I've done it on her behalf. So apologies to the committee for the confusion at the last meeting. It was an officer mistake. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Noted. I think the committee picked up on the mistake and made some strong representations, which thankfully were heard, and it was all resolved, and we all lived happily ever after. So thank you for that. Okay, moving on then. Item 5 is the forward plan. Anybody got any representations in relation to the forward? Yes, Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. And we've many times before, Chair, mentioned the short period between some items arriving in the forward plan and them actually being considered by Cabinet. And there's a really good example on the copy of forward plan in the papers of this, in that there were 4 items that were considered on the 9th of October, 3 of which first appeared in the forward plan in September. And if any of those, that period of time is not sufficient for some of the scrutiny committees to have met, to have been able to consider if they wish to review the items in the forward plan. So, Chair, I think we just need to do a little bit more on this, about raising the profile, maybe doing some research as to how typical this forward plan is, and maybe to take that forward. I'm wondering whether a meeting might be appropriate.
Thank you, Lucy. Yes, you're absolutely right. I was going to raise the same 3 myself that were put into the forward plan in September, just in time for October. So that's obviously insufficient notice. And there are still emissions from the forward plan. I think, Councillor Moore, did you want to raise the current issue?
Yeah, no, it's just that there's still no new iteration of whatever will replace Project Assemble. So obviously I know initially we're going to do demolition, and now we're not going to do that because we're still working on what is going to replace Project Assemble, but I still think it'd be useful to have it and to have the foresight in the forward plan for whatever is going to be conjured up. I think that's important, because this is something that's, I think, too important for all of us and for this council to ignore.
Yes, still a glaring omission. So yes, I have spoken to Stephen, who's spoken to Alex, and we've agreed that we can put together a meeting to kick this issue around until such times as we come up with a solution to encourage officers to get them into the forward plan in a timely fashion to enable proper scrutiny. And as it's an issue that I raised when I first took over this scrutiny board, it's time to resolve it once and for all. So we'll arrange that meeting. Councillor Kerr, do you want to be involved in that when we do that meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would, and I think it might be appropriate if any members of this committee could join it as well if they wish.
I'm sure they can all be invited. Martin, I'm looking at you. Do you think there's anybody amongst the Labour group that can declare an interest in it now?
Well, I think I'd agree that we all should be invited, Chair, and then we'll make sure that somebody from the group is able to attend.
Okay, thank you, Martin. You'll have to bear with me, folks, tonight. I've been for an eye examination tonight, and I can see faces, or I can see bodies, but I can't see faces, and I can't see hands when they are. I think I saw it. Yes, Mr. Simpson. You know, he doesn't come very often. When he does, he's here all the time. Come on.
Making up for lost time, Chair. Thank you. Just for the committee and specifically Councillor Mulhall's information, the item is on the forward plan. It's not called Project Assemble. It is called City Centre Site Redevelopment. So that is on the forward plan. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Does it say which site? Sites. Okay. We were to read between the lines, Councillor Mulhall. Okay. Anything else on the forward plan? No? Okay. In that case, I will move on to item 6 and the Cabinet responses to scrutiny recommendations. And usefully, Stephen started to put a chart, if you like, of recommendations made and Cabinet's responses. And on this occasion, I think there were 3 recommendations, all of which Cabinet considered were already being dealt with. So that arose, Stephen, out of our concern that some scrutiny, executive scrutiny recommendations were being ignored by Cabinet, but doesn't seem to apply on this occasion. Councillor Kerr.
I think this is a useful development, and thanks, Stephen, for it. I just wondered if we'd put an additional column in, which would be the total recommendations made at the meeting, and then we could see the split in the columns that he's then got there. So in this case, it would be 0 for June and July, it would be 2 for August, it would be 5 for September and 3 for October. And just see at a glance as to whether we're doing our job as well.
I think we can accommodate that, can't we? By all means. Good. All right, moving on then, because I'm conscious of the fact that we've got a very large agenda tonight, and we've got a presentation which I'm just about to come to. Whereabouts is it on our agenda? It is item 7, so the delivery board update. And I've got Heather sitting next to me, so I'm guessing it's going to come from you, yeah? Read it. Got a dead microphone.
Good evening. My name is Heather Greenan. I'm Director of Corporate Management of the City Council, and I understand that at the September meeting of this board, you requested an update on the work of the MTFP Delivery Board. So I suspect that would have been referred to as part of the Q1 financial monitoring report, and certainly it is also referred to in the medium-term financial strategy, which is one of the Cabinet papers that you're receiving today. So the MTFP Delivery Board is a key mechanism for how we drive change and transformation within the organisation, as well as underpinning the delivery of savings through our medium-term financial plan. So what I'm going to do this evening is just give you an overview of the board, the programmes that sit as part of it, and I am ably assisted by colleagues around the room who are just going to give a bit more detail about each of the programmes that we have in place. If I can just pass on apologies from Alison Parkin, Director of Finance, and also Keely Freeman, who is actually our Head of Projects and Change and who leads the work of the Delivery Board. So, let me move on. So, just in terms of an overview of the Delivery Board, it was set up in April of last year. We have kind of evolved. At the moment there are 5 key programmes that form part of the work of the MTFP Delivery Board. We're going to focus on each one in turn, just so you get an insight as to the type of work that we're doing and the projects that are sitting in those boards, and they are all directly linked to savings that have been approved as part of our medium-term financial plan for the last couple of years and obviously in the coming budget. As part of the MTFP Delivery Board, we do have it. It is a full kind of council commitment to it. So all of directors across corporate leadership team sit on the Delivery Board, and it's actually chaired by our Strategic Director of People, Andy Smith. To try and kind of enable and also quality assure the programmes that we have as part of the Delivery Board, the Digital Enablement Board, which really assesses the kind of the digital, the IT implications of any projects, and then also we have our Programme Management Office Board. So those 2 boards very much kind of sit hand in hand with the Delivery Board and provide the kind of, I guess, the support and challenge at different gateway points as projects and programmes progress. And it is part of the overall governance that we have that really supports the delivery. So across each of the 5 areas, we have a number of projects and work streams that kind of form part of that. It is dynamic, so we kind of obviously review, and the groups meet really regularly to just assess current projects, track benefits, and obviously the savings that are linked to that. A key part of any change and transformation is the people and culture, because without the people and culture aspects, around whether it be programmes such as artificial intelligence, it's really key that we engage people and we think about the workforce implications. So the People and Culture programme really kind of, I think, is cross-cutting across all of those different programmes, and we do try and kind of link in and just make sure we are thinking about those implications as we go. So, just in summary, the main purpose of the MTFP Delivery Board, we do act as senior champions for change in the organisation. We have got that corporate leadership commitment to it. We regularly review the programmes and really make decisions about business cases as to actually whether programmes and projects are going to deliver the benefits intended. Certainly we track MTFP savings, and we're going to talk through some of the savings that are linked to the programmes. And ultimately what we do is we do share learning. So where we close projects, where we review outcomes, we take the opportunity to review what could have gone better, but also the achievements that we've made as part of those programmes. And we do also really closely monitor risks and issues, escalating where appropriate and certainly mitigating. And often, a lot of these programmes and projects are actually feature in the performance monitoring report, and certainly the financial monitoring reports that Cabinet and Exec Scrutiny see on a quarterly basis. So, in terms of savings that are actually attached to the MTFP Delivery Board, so you can see they are very significant. For 23-24, savings of 4.2 million were delivered last year. So if I relate to, what we'll talk about these in each of the different kind of areas, but essentially if I look at, for example, assets, 140,000, that linked directly to rental income received through the council house. In terms of demand and insight, so about 1.2 million. That has really been driven through a range of demand initiatives, one of which I would say is our Insight-led programme, which Corporate Services Scrutiny Board, for example, have had a couple of presentations on the work that's been going on there to really kind of understand, to identify, to help track some of the vulnerable families that we're working with. A, to help them, but also B, to obviously try and mitigate the demand on council services. And efficiency and innovation, we've actually delivered 2.8 million. So again, really significant. That links to a range of initiatives, whether that be debt recovery, income maximisation, in some case more efficient management of administration services, and but perhaps most importantly, how we're commissioning services, whether that be through direct services or placements. So, but again, we'll cover more in the actual areas. And then finally, these are just the savings that are planned for 24-25. Again, what you can see there is artificial intelligence. There's 3.9 million there. So again, a really significant amount, and adult social care 1.35 million. So, I mean, what we do is obviously we really closely monitor what is coming out of each of the boards to enable the reporting that we then do into Cabinet and to exec scrutiny. I think it's worth noting that the focus of, for example, demand and insight has changed during the year. So certainly in September, we have kind of refocused that towards housing. And the adult social care one is actually a recently reconfigured programme that was set up in September. So they are the two new ones. Right, that's enough in terms of overview. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Emily Feenan just to talk about the assets rationalisation programme.
Sorry, Heather, do you want to take questions at the end or at each officer?
Maybe at the end of each section, potentially, that might be easier. Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any questions at this point?
I have a couple that I could either save till later or we could get out of the way now. The 5 different areas, are they all dealt with within one meeting or are there individual meetings for the 5?
There are individual kind of working groups for each of the 5, but we kind of roll it up into one overall board that monitors across all 5 areas. Okay,
so any savings that can be identified and achieved, I take it they're dealt with in accordance with the delegations that officers have been given. It just strikes as an opportunity or potential opportunity to try and shortcut things and make decisions and not have the right governance attached. Are the safeguards in hand?
There are safeguards in place. So obviously any savings are delivered in accordance with appropriate delegations, but they are as agreed in the medium-term financial plan and the budget.
And if there's any significant changes?
Then they would be reported as part of, I was going to say I'm looking at financial colleagues, but I think they would be reported as part of any financial implications report into Cabinet. If it's beyond delegations, yeah. Okay,
so the next question links quite nicely into asset rationalisation programme in that I note that it's £160,000 last year and only planned for 250,000 next year. I mean, it doesn't sound very ambitious with the amount of assets that the council has in terms of the savings.
Thank you, Chair. Emily Feenan, Director of Corporate Governance, Property and Procurement. The savings relate to additional income being generated as revenue through rentals. However, not on there are the capital receipts that Phase 2 of Asset Rationalisation Programme will look to deliver over the next 12 months. And Chair, you will note on the forward plan that there are a series of Cabinet reports coming to December Cabinet on some significant asset disposals, which will provide details on private session of estimated capital receipts hoped to be achieved by those sales, which are significant.
Sorry, that answers my question. Thank you. Do you want to, was there anything else you wanted to say?
Are you happy for me to cover my slides now, Chair? Thank you. So, thank you. So the asset rationalisation programme is now moving into phase 2. Phase 1 was primarily focused on increasing occupancy in the council house, and committee will recall that in June 2023, Cabinet gave permission to rent out up to 200 desks in the council house. Just over 100 desks have been rented so far, and we continue to work to find partners to rent out the remaining desks. During phase 1, we also spent time looking to enhance council house functionality, which included increasing the number of meeting rooms, renewing IT equipment, replacing chairs to replace those on loan to staff who are working hybridly, amongst other activities. The Asset Rationalisation Programme also administers the Place Pilot grant funding money, and that funding has been used to fund feasibility work at Morliston Day Centre and Arboretum House and at Riverside Chambers. And I will pick up on that on the next slide, please, Heather. So we're now moving, as I say, into the second phase of the programme, which is expected to continue until the end of financial year 25-26. As part of this work, we're undertaking occupancy and use reviews at Royal Oak House, Ash Tree House, Riverside Chambers, Friargate Studios, Arboretum House and Morliston Day Centre. The intention is that where properties are no longer required and are surplus to the council's requirements, we will look to declare those, seek approval from Cabinet to have those properties declared surplus, and then we'll move forward with the disposal of those buildings to generate capital receipts. Obviously, this work often includes the relocation of the services that are already based in those buildings to more suitable accommodation options. And as I mentioned previously, Chair, reports will be coming to December Cabinet on Ash Tree House, Royal Oak House and the relocation of registration services to Riverside Chambers, amongst others. We continue to work on council house optimisation. We do hope to lease the remaining 100 desks approved by Cabinet to a third-party partner. Almost certainly that will be, we'll be looking for a partnership with another NHS organisation, as the NHS's data security, information governance requirements are very similar to the council's. So the two organisations make good space sharers in the council house because we don't have to put up separate security arrangements between us. We've already relocated fostering service into the council house, and as members will be aware, we're looking to reconfigure the democracy and members areas to increase usage of this space and create additional meeting spaces. There's also work planned to look at the third floor of the council house to improve the working environment on that floor. Although not strictly part of the asset rationalisation programme, the programme board does consider other corporate property related business, and we are looking to accelerate disposal of any vacant or surplus property. Members will be aware we have recently disposed of 68 Rutland Street. We're looking to dispose of 91 Dairy House Road, amongst others. And there is a steady stream of properties coming forward each month for disposal to generate important capital receipts for the council. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Phelan at this point? Can I just ask about just go back to the last slide. The other surplus properties, Rutland Street, Dairy House Road, Garden Street, are these houses that could be recycled to use for housing rather than anything else, rather than being sold off?
Thank you, Chair. Whenever a property becomes vacant or is being considered for future use, the first port of call is always strategic housing, to review with them whether there would be a use for it in terms of housing, be it temporary or as a site for redevelopment as longer term homes. In all of those cases, that work has been done, and strategic housing have determined that these are not properties which are suitable for that.
Next.
In terms of demand and insight, Sue-Ann Lim is the Senior Responsible Officer for this programme, but I'm just going to give a short update on it. I think I did mention we have previously explored a range of demand initiatives, really to try and prevent demand where possible, but certainly try and avoid costs where we are incurring demand. So we've done a lot of work looking at supporting families, in terms of, as I mentioned, the sort of better identification and tracking of vulnerable families through that particular programme, and that has really assisted, I guess, the support that we're able to provide to vulnerable families, as well as achieve income through the government's payment by results reporting. So that is certainly an area that we have explored in quite a lot of detail, as well as just look more broadly at what is coming through the front door from an adult's and a children's perspective. I think we know there's a lot more that could be done here, and certainly we've explored from a locality point of view how we can be looking at preventing that demand. As I think we've talked about at previous boards, this isn't it's not a quick initiative. This is something that actually takes, will take effect in the medium to long term, but that is certainly something that we're continuing to develop. What we have done this year is refocus demand and insight to look more specifically at the housing pressures. As I think when we come on to talking about the financial and the performance monitoring reports, we know we're seeing quite significant numbers in temporary accommodation. So that's really, really unsuitable for families and others that actually are going into that kind of temporary accommodation, but it's also extremely expensive from a housing subsidy point of view. So we have looked at a range of interventions, and I would say, again, this work is sort of at a relatively early stage, but one of the things that we have done is kind of purchased and we're in the process of opening the Abbey Lodge facility, which is going to provide some repurposed temporary accommodation for families, and I know the first block has opened very recently. We're also looking at a range of other initiatives. As I said, it's quite early days at this point, but we are just recognizing, this is a national problem, but it's about locally what can we do to try and reduce the numbers of people who are actually going into temporary accommodation. So I think in due course we'd be happy to come back and talk a little bit more around this, but that's just an update in terms of where we are currently.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Heather Lim on this occasion? Yes, Lucy.
This is something that's really concerning me at the moment for lots of reasons. And I just wondered whether there has been, in part of that new scoping of options for the housing pressures, you've looked at expanding what we're doing in terms of shared lives into Shared Lives Plus, which I understand that a number of local authorities do, and it's a system that's already set up. So it shouldn't take too much to start implementing it. Might take some officer time.
I'm just looking at my colleague around.
Just looking around for inspiration.
I mean, we have looked at options in terms of shared lives, haven't we? That is one of the things that we've looked at.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We are looking at shared lives, but further work needs to be done in order to see where the opportunities lie and how it could be effective. So work is underway to consider opportunities for shared lives.
This is Shared Lives Plus, which is a slightly different scheme. We're already doing Shared Lives, so this would be a new scheme. Maybe something to take away.
Yeah, to be honest, should we take that offline?
That's fine.
Councillor Kerr, because I think it would be good to just understand that, but then we could perhaps see whether that is something that's being explored. So,
yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Heather, from my point of view, more of a comment than a question, really. I think in terms of demand and insight, we seem to be showing some benefits, we seem to be reaping the benefits of work in relation to children's in the past, in that children's costs are not increasing anyway like they used to do. But you're moving on to housing, which is good, because that's obviously an increase in cost. But the biggest increase in cost is in adult service, adult care, and where you're looking at going with that.
Yeah, that's correct. There has been significant work done in children's, and as you say, we are reaping the benefits in that, you know, we are seeing lower rates of children in care, which is positive, and certainly quite different to actually what is taking place in other areas. In terms of demands for adults, we do recognise that pressure, and that is one of the reasons why a separate programme has been set up focused directly on adults.
Next.
I'm afraid it's me again. I'm so sorry. Although I'm hoping Mr. Bramwell is going to chip in potentially on this. But Alison Parkin is the SRO for Efficiency and Innovation. There's a real wealth of work going on here, to be honest, across the board. So that includes a number of different areas. So, for example, reviewing leisure facilities, and we're going to hear from Tammy and Wayne later on the agenda around that. We have been trying to improve our commercial offer across a number of services. You know, again, that is reaping benefits, as well as just generally looking at our procurement and commissioning activity. So we have undertaken a third-party review across a number of areas, again, to just look at how we can, you know, achieve greater value for money through our, you know, buying power, but also looking at more specific areas, things like community libraries, debt management, as well as just overall kind of rationalisation of resources from a support perspective. So there is a number of different projects that are part of the Efficiency and Innovation programme, which, you know, again, we can give a bit more detail if anybody is interested. Any questions on that, please?
Councillor Kerr.
Sorry, my microphone was already left on. My apologies. Some of the things that the council could do may be flagged up by members of the public to councillors. And it'd be really useful if we had a route, not just us in this room, but all councillors, had a route by which we could feed in ideas that could be investigated further. Do you think that could be included in a missive out to us at some point?
Absolutely. To be honest, we've got a similar ideas kind of contact point for members of staff. So to be honest, we could just offer the same to councillors. We're very happy to receive any ideas, you know, and would welcome suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take advantage of having the Chief Executive here at this point. These areas, and particularly this one, Efficiency Innovation Programme, you could almost add to it, and saving money. Yes, we need to drive efficiency and innovation and everything else that we've already started to talk about, with a view to saving money, but not at a cost to services and to harm to these areas. How are we ensuring that, whilst money is a consideration, it's not the main driver?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a great question, and one obviously that we take really, really seriously because, as you will well know, officers' aspirations matches that of your political aspirations in terms of wanting to ensure that frontline services, wherever possible, are protected. And so we try to be innovative, we try to be creative, we try and maximise the use of some of the things that Heather and colleagues have touched on to ensure that wherever possible we can protect services. It's not always possible, but if you look at some of those examples that are up there, what they are talking about is potentially different models of service delivery, but the service delivery remains. So Symphony Golf Course, that will still be a facility that local people can use. The way in which it's provided, which most people won't be particularly concerned about that. They just want to ensure that they've got access to that service. Similarly, the libraries. The vast majority of people, I'm sure, who want to use the libraries won't be particularly interested in how they're provided as long as they're provided. And of course, we have a statutory responsibility to provide a certain level of library provision anyway. And then some of those other things that are on there are you know, good housekeeping. that you would expect us to have each and every year. So making sure that we're collecting the debt in the most effective way. And, you know, let's be honest about it, we probably haven't been as good as that at that in the past. I'm sure Andy will come on and talk about, as part of his AI update, about some of the things that we're doing in that space. Alison's led a piece of work over the last year or so on reviewing our contracts. And again, we obviously try and ensure wherever possible we can continue to provide services whilst making sure that we do that in the most cost-efficient manner. It's not always possible. And again, you know, as we're going forward into the budget, which the team will talk about a bit later on, again, our priority will be to protect frontline services wherever possible.
Okay, thank you for that. Unless that's generated any more questions next.
We'll move on to AI.
Andy.
Hello, Andy Bramall, Director of Digital and Physical Infrastructure and Customer Engagement. So the update from the AI perspective is we're currently in phase one of the AI program implementation. There are three main elements I want to update on tonight. First of all, being the customer services and wider council project. This covers updating the customer services co-pilot that we know as Darcy and Ali into a significantly upgraded version which looks to cover wider services, give much more accurate and improved responses, and and an enriched experience, and also looks to be able to increase the number of calls that can be answered 24/7 fully automatically at citizens' convenience, up to around 60%, rising from the current 43% performance, which in itself, following initial implementation, exceeded the initial expectations of the solution. Secondly, the wider staff internal council automation, which is a Darcy type solution, but assisting internal colleagues and members to access services. And thirdly, inbox management, such that we automate high volume areas where customer inquiries and queries and service requests come in through email channels as the access route of choice, such that, again, like all of the other programs, we're putting automation in to assist our human colleagues in to be able to do higher value and more complex needs that only humans can deliver. As far as where we are with those programs, there are a number of AI solutions that are now in acceptance tests, so are being put through they're built and they're being put through their testing phases in readiness for public release. These are in email management and the internal co-pilot, which in turn the internal co-pilot has delivered a whole host of new capabilities that exceed the initial expectations, because the technology has moved on, and this gives us some new opportunities as well. And shortly we'll be moving into the testing phases of the remaining aspects of this part of the program. Moving on, the income management project. This covers mostly AI enabling the debt management activities within the council. So covers being able to pull the data together from across the entirety of the council systems and have a clear understanding of what overall debt is in the council, such that it can be ethically managed. And then moving into delivery of solutions that help with collection of debt. So using AI and automated methods to nudge and remind citizens and business who can pay that they need to pay, and help them to actually do that. As I say, that's all controlled with ethical safety barriers, such that we protect people who can't pay and offer support around that. The update on that is the data, the understanding, and the analysis side that comes together in the debt dashboard, so that we have that single view of debt within the council. That's currently been built and is currently going through testing phases, and we will be looking to deliver the technology around chasing and reminding of the debt in the coming weeks, all culminating before Christmas. The third element is around adult social care, and members will doubtless recall this is a combination of AI and non-AI activity. So there is a large non-AI activity which is around carrying out a large volume of care reviews in adult social care, and this then leads into having delivered a portfolio of reviewed care packages. It also informs the machine learning and the programming for the AI products that going forward will assist our human colleagues in doing those activities on an ongoing basis. As far as update where we are in that space, work has begun on the care assessments, and we're currently reviewing the impact of that. It was always the intention that we would go so far through those care assessments, understand what the learning and the validity with those were, and modify the plan accordingly. And that's currently awaiting restart following that review. Additionally, we've brought forward some additional opportunities that have revealed themselves around financial assessments of those portfolio of care packages, and that commenced in October and is ongoing and showing good results. Thank you. Happy to take questions, of course.
Thanks, Andy. Questions, comments for Andy Bramall? Yes, Martin.
Yes, thank you. Just in relation to access for members of the public, and adult social care is probably associated with perhaps older members of the community, and whilst don't want to generalise and say make assumptions about all people's ability to use IT, it does tend to be a demographic that perhaps struggles more than others in terms of having use of computers and accessing it. So I guess the question is, how does that fit into delivering the service, and what has that been taken into account, and ensuring that the service is still both accessible for people, but also that people feel that they're receiving a good service and not some sort of automated response, which you know, could be the case for some people.
Mr. Bramall.
Thank you, Chair. A key part of the whole programme, and will continue to be a key part of the whole programme, is ensuring there's inclusivity and no one's excluded as part of the programme. So key ethic here is maximising the good quality service that can be delivered in an automated way, but always ensuring there are accessible channels and choice for citizens and business who can't, or in some cases won't, or aren't confident to actually access the service in that way. So I have and I'm happy to keep talking about this, that throughout this programme, no channel is taken away. All the accessible channels and routes will always be there. The option to speak to a human will always be there. But in the interests of taking us forward, we will always encourage people to try and use the digital solution, but we'll never mandate that. So it's the only route. And there are a number of ways we can do that. But we have an ethics and compliance board that oversees most of the work that's undertaken. We work with groups such as the Equality and Diversity and Inclusion team, who assist us with check-in and testing the access routes to ensure that nobody's excluded, and indeed feeding back to us on how the access channels can be refined and further improved, or where barriers might be starting to emerge, so that we can remediate those.
Thank you. Any other questions? That's okay.
I'm sure, I hope, well, perhaps I'm unlucky. I may be the only person the only councillor who's still getting people contacting me because they aren't able to get through Darcy. No, you don't have anybody any longer? They're all getting through? They're not? No. So we still have a problem with Darcy.
I think Councillor Wright's saying you're not the only one that's
I'm not the only
still
one.
getting
I'm not the only one.
Darcy and Darcy inquiries.
And people who are IT competent, they're able to email me, they are not getting through. They're telling me they've tried phoning and they can't get through. So we're not there yet. In one of the later papers, it says this has been delivered, and it clearly hasn't. And I just wonder, we've asked probably a year ago now for a way of getting in touch with the team to say, this element has been a problem. And in some cases, it's still things like bins that I'm being asked about, which should be a mainstream question. So can we have a route by which we can actually feed in the same way as Heather's explained that we can feed in ideas? Can we have a route that we can feed in problem areas which we're being asked about, so that we can actually deal with those issues?
That nicely leads me into my question on this, Andy, because it was around Darcy and Ali. I am, like Councillor Kerr, still getting queries in relation to that. And my concern here is that, you know, have we learned the lessons of applying Darcy and Ali to customer services when we're broaching out into care packages and care reviews and things like that? Because I'm not saying they're any more important than customer services, but we experienced issues with Darcy and Ali, and one way you can do it, Councillor Kerr, is to email Andy directly if you get particular ones. But my question, Andy, was: do you feel that your colleagues in the service have properly recognised the issues that people are having with Darcy and Ali, learnt the lessons from that, and will not have the same problems going forward? Because we're going to learn later on in the papers about underachievement in targets for AI, aren't we? Particularly around adults, I think, is the main area where we're not achieving the targets. So what's your views on all that?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, as far as the access to officers to actually give feedback, I think, as I said, a number of forums, members can always email myself, and I'll ensure that feedback is fed into the process. We've also put in place the feedback channel, which has been communicated through member communications, so that can also be used. As far as learning from Darcy and Ali implementation, it's probably worth noting that thus far Darcy and Ali have answered 1.4 million questions with only a relatively small, and I'm talking less than 100 complaints by comparison. So by any measure, it's been extremely successful. Now, that's not to say we don't value the feedback such that we can refine and inform the ongoing development of that, because it is absolutely invaluable. And we have a regime in place such that, based on that feedback and based on actively reviewing the activity that comes through the Darcy and Ali channels, we're constantly learning and actually tweaking, tuning and informing both the current deployment of Darcy and Ali and the ongoing development. And in partnership with us, the AI partner are constantly reviewing the performance and using anonymised data to actually continually improve the experience. The next iteration, the upgraded version of Darcy that I mentioned in my update, will have a significant leap forward in the technology that will allow it to have better understanding of what citizen and business who use the channel are asking for, be able to more efficiently give answers to a much wider range of inquiries, and be able to improve the experience even further. And this is where we would be looking to for it to increase its performance and be able to answer even more things. But again, to reiterate, we will never take anything away. There will always be the option to speak to a human. There will always be the option to use the accessible channels, and any feedback that we receive that is contrary to that, where people have had problems getting through, we will look into those and actually learn from those and tune it accordingly.
Thanks, Andy. I have to say the cynical side of me here says we don't. You quote some stats at us there in relation to how many things Darcy and Ali have dealt with, but what it can't know is where members of the public have given up on the system after half an hour or so. And I'm wondering, when we're increasing the range and the wider range of inquiries that it's going to be dealing with, does that going to extend the time that you have to go through the different options, or what? Because it really does occur on a regular basis in certainly my casework, and it sounds like one or two others, that there are still great frustrations out there.
Part of the regime is looking where that failure to get the intended result is, and again, that's where the feedback is extremely valuable. There are a number of reasons again why the feedback is valuable and why we have the regime to look into this, where the reason for dissatisfaction isn't necessarily Darcy and Ali itself, because Darcy and Ali will field calls and then pass them into back offices, and if there's issues then with the fulfilment of the service in the back offices, then obviously that's gone beyond Darcy and Ali, and the next iteration, which is why it should be an improvement, will look to actually deal automatically with more of those things, rather than going into contentious phone lines where there's a queue, for example, once it's past Darcy and Ali. But again, the feedback's key, and we look into all these. It's virtually impossible for Darcy and Ali to keep people waiting half an hour. It answers virtually straight away, and where it can assist, it does assist. It's when it's then passed into like human call queues, for example, where wait times would be experienced, and that would be the same if Darcy and Ali didn't exist. There's a capacity in the back offices and in the call centres where if you do speak to a human, then there's a call wait time for that.
I get that, Andy, but it is a recurring issue. Every time we get to talk about AI, this is always an issue. Councillor,
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a quick one, really. When we said, I think it was 1.4 million questions that we said there that Ali's dealt with. What what sort of the definition we give of answering a question? Because so in my experience of residents that have got in touch with me around this, there's sort of a 3 or 4 stage process between them calling up and getting to where they want to be. Sometimes Darcy asks them a question, sometimes they're told to ask Darcy a question. Do each one of those stages count as one question? So if there's 3 stages, for example, of the conversation, is that 3 questions that go down as being answered, or is it 1 phone call, 1 question, 1 data point?
There are multiple questions that can be asked in one phone call, but the question count is an actual question from a citizen asking Darcy for information, or asking Darcy for to be given access to a service, or to be put through to a particular area of the council.
Okay, unfortunately, I think we could spend more time on this as we have done in the past. So, and we've got a very busy agenda to go through. So, I'm going to move on to adult social care, and Gamal's going to tell us all about that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Gamal is a Director for Commissioning and Delivery. Chair, that slide sets out that we established an adult social care MTFP programme board in September 2024. And Chair, you made the comment earlier around the methodology adopted in children's. We are using a similar lens to look at this. But of course, Chair, it's important to note the volume of customers and clients are significantly larger and higher in that adult social care space. So this programme is in place with the aim of reducing the financial pressures on adult social care and trying to bring expenditure in line with budgets for 24-25. The issues are outlined in the bullet points on that slide around what we're looking into, around seeking to minimise the need for future high-cost placements, analysing and reviewing the cost of high-cost placements to ensure value for money with that forensic lens, reviewing our approach of the council towards direct payments, improving systems and procedures in terms of adult social care, improving our forecasting ability for future need and demographic changes and an ageing population and pressures in the city across the population, improving budget monitoring and enhancing budget monitoring, and Chair, and of course, Chair, as referred to earlier, seeking to recover adult social care debt where appropriate. So those work streams are underway within that adult social care programme board. Happy to take any questions.
Questions for Gamal? Yes, Councillor Red.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. By seeking to minimise the need for future high-cost placements, not quite sure what that means. Does that mean that you'll go for more inferior placements? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. No, it won't be that. It's trying to look at other models, either the way we commission some of those high-cost placements, or perhaps moving into strategic partnerships with particular adult social care providers, and where we could work in a much more hybrid partnership for better outcomes, one, and hopefully reduced cost as well. So it isn't about ending high-cost placements. It's kind of ensuring value for money, and are there other models, such as the ones I've just described, that we could consider with some development work underway jointly with providers.
Any other questions for Gamal? No, I think that brings the end of the presentation. So just as a general observation, officers, and for you to take back, it's good to have the efforts that are being made documented and to be able to evidence what's being done. I think from what I've seen of it tonight, there's been a lot of what's being done now was already being done, but not in the same format or in the same forums, if you like. So it's good that it's documented, and it's good that we're trying to tackle it, but we're having to tackle these issues because of the financial situation that the council finds itself in. So thank you for your presentation, and no doubt we can get updates as we go along from time to time. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. Moving back to our agenda then, it moves us on to the council cabinet agenda, I'm going to beg your indulgence in changing the order slightly, in that I'd like to bring forward the one that we always forget at the end, and we keep somebody waiting around for the rest of it for all evening. So I'm going to bring it forward to the next item that we discuss, because it's item 15 on the agenda for the Cabinet, the performance report. And Sarah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for bringing this item further forward. So I'm Sarah Walker, I'm the Head of Strategy, Performance and Partnerships, and I'll give a very brief overview to the Q2 Performance Monitoring Report to allow time for questions. Obviously, there are many colleagues here tonight that can also assist with responding to any particular questions. So the report covers the period from April to the end of September, with a specific focus on July to September, which is Q2 of our monitoring period. As usual, it provides a full update in terms of progress against the Council Delivery Plan, covering the period of 2024 to 25. It provides an update on our objectives, our priority projects, our priority performance measures, and also the latest strategic risks as they were at the end of the reporting period. So the risks that are presented within the report will be those at the end of September. I think that's an area that often generates lots of questions, because our risk landscape is really dynamic, so we know lots emerges between the end of the reporting period and the time at which I'm presenting this report. I also want to note that it's the first report that we're presenting following the implementation of our new performance management system, which is our Performance and Risk System, or PARS. This was actually implemented on the 1st of October, so we have implemented that alongside, obviously, delivery of the Q2 Performance Monitoring Report. So the look and feel of this report is probably different to that which we've seen over the last few years, and we will continue to develop it as we evolve our reporting suite of information. So as always, I'd really welcome any feedback outside of this meeting as to areas where colleagues would like further information. So in terms of key highlights, as at the end of September, 62% of our performance measures that had a target had either met or exceeded them, and 50% had improved from their comparable period in the previous year. The reason that we're comparing the comparable period in the previous year is to allow for seasonality, which is many of our areas are subjected to. In terms of a number of key highlights, I'm just going to pick out a few in terms of achievements set out in paragraph 4.7 of the covering report, and there's more details in both Appendix 1 and Appendix 2. We've seen our sustained performance in relation to our green and blue spaces, specifically our 6 parks, which have maintained their green flag, alongside the Community Green Flag Awards for 7 of our spaces. Abbey Lodge has already been mentioned in the previous item, but this is a real significant area of development given some of the pressures we've seen in relation to single individuals and households that have been placed in temporary accommodation. That as a project is progressing well. There's been lots of work that's happened following on not just from the cost of living crisis, but probably, if I'm honest, going back to COVID and pre-COVID, in terms of how we respond to the challenges that our communities are facing, particularly in relation to anti-poverty and wider areas of need that are required. We've had a positive audit in the use of our Household Support Fund, which has been really critical in supporting families and people across the city to achieve their outcomes, not just over the last reporting period, but for many years. And we continue to focus on ensuring that those within Derby access their entitlements in terms of benefits, and there's been a particular focus on pension credit in the last reporting period. In terms of our vibrancy, Moorways, which is obviously run jointly, has seen an excellent rating, which is really positive in ensuring that we're supporting our communities in terms of their health and well-being, and providing facilities that people can access to promote that good health. And from a Working Smarter perspective, we launched our Employee Assistance Programme. Has lots of different dimensions to that, but when I come to talk about the areas for development, it's really important that we are working to support our colleagues and our workforce, both from a mental and emotional health and wellbeing perspective, but also a physical health and wellbeing perspective, and that's all included as part of that employee assistance programme work that has been undertaken over the last quarter. In terms of areas for development, We know that there are many threats that we face, just as a sector and as a city. In terms of the areas from a performance perspective that have emerged, there are no surprises here. There are areas that we've talked about in previous reporting quarters. So youth unemployment within the city is above national average, and the number of young people not in employment, education and training is over target. This is expected at this point of year. It's due to seasonality as we're confirming destinations of those young people. But obviously the work of the Derby Promise is ensuring that we are looking at that more broadly, both from a targeted cohort perspective, but also our wider young people to support, raise aspirations and support them into positive outcomes. We know that there are challenges in relation to the number of younger adults that are potentially requiring nursing and residential care. Whilst this is a small cohort, actually we are over target and we've seen a rise compared to previous years, and it's something that we obviously picked up in the Q1 Performance Monitoring Report and does have financial implications. We're continuing to see high demand in terms of education, health and care plans, and this has impacted timeliness. And from a working smarter perspective, we are over target at this point in relation to our sickness absence. The profile of those working days lost has changed from the period that we considered at the end of June. The main reason for sickness absence continues to be stress and anxiety, but we have seen a change in the subsequent areas in terms of post-operative recovery and musculoskeletal, which are areas that we do see come in the top 3 reasons for sickness absence, but we've got some work ongoing within that area to do targeted analysis. In terms of the objectives that we monitor as part of the Council Delivery Plan, we have 51. None of these have reported major slippage at the end of September. We've had 6 that have reported some slippage at the end of September, but some of those have subsequently made progress. So one of those, for example, was the Climate Change Action Plan, which will be considered tonight. So we are constantly reviewing and challenging ourselves to ensure that we can deliver in line with our commitments. We've got 34 priority projects. You've heard updates on quite a number of those actually through the work of the Delivery Board. 85% of these at the end of September were assessed as either green or amber green. From a reporting perspective, we've had 2 new projects come into the framework over the last reporting period, and the status of 3 projects have changed. Full details of those are in Appendix 2, and you have an overview in paragraph 4.10 of the report. In terms of our strategic risks, we had 17 at the end of September, 10 of which had a threat score of 12 or more. This wouldn't be unexpected given what we know the sector is facing, but also it is our strategic risk register. So we would always focus on those areas of greatest threat and or opportunity. And at that point, it's important to note that we have 3 risks within the strategic risk register that also have an opportunity score alongside a threat score. Finally, at the point of approving the Council Delivery Plan, we made a commitment that the plan would be dynamic, that we would ensure that it was reflective of the latest priorities for the City and the Council. So set out in paragraph 4.5 are 3 changes that Cabinet colleagues are going to be asked to approve, one of which is the introduction of a new objective, and the other 2 are changes in definitions to align with national reporting frameworks and also our commissioning arrangements. I'm happy to take any questions or to direct them to colleagues within the room.
Thank you, Sarah. You had full time to get heard there, didn't you? And you probably get some questions out of it. So any questions for Sarah? Yes, Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a thorough report as always, Sarah. Just a quick one. One of the key risks where there's been an increase is around the East Midlands County Combined Authority devolution transition. And it says that this has increased to very high impact. This is due to imminent decisions to be made on investment and funding, which could have a significant impact on our project pipeline and services. So I'm just wondering what's changed as of recent to increase the risk to very high, and what impact could it have, and on what projects in particular, specifically, if you know?
I do, but Heather knows more detail than me, so I'll pass over to Heather.
I think there are various colleagues in this room who are aware of, but essentially, I mean, I guess what we felt was that because there is both an opportunity risk and a kind of a threat risk attached to the East Midlands Combined Authority. I guess what we feel is just because there is more business coming forward with respect to pipelines, I mean, particularly around, I guess, from a skills, a transport and a regeneration front. You may be aware, I mean, there was a recent board meeting that was looking at, for example, UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which, you know, currently comes direct to this authority. From April, it will be channeled through the combined authority. So what we are aware of is that there are more kind of funding decisions being taken at that level. Obviously, we want to be involved, we want to influence those decisions, but I think it was just, we felt from a risk perspective that it was important to just recognise those. So I haven't got kind of any more specific examples. What we're doing is we're working with the combined authority in terms of the forward plan to try and understand what is coming out of, for example, the new growth plan. You know, there are various ways in which we can try and influence that. And I think the Chief Exec may be following up.
Thank you. I was hoping that Paul might come in, but I think for me, Heather, it serves to highlight the importance of being prepared to bid into these pilot schemes and to the pilot and to the funding that's going to come available. And one of the concerns I have around it is the lack of transport infrastructure funding and the need to create a strategic transport board before we get that. But that's probably further down the line. My experience of the combined authority at the moment is the administration of it is in its infancy, shall we say, but developing quite quickly. So over to you, Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. And I think the question that's been posed is a very sensible one. And Heather's absolutely right. It is a combination of risk and opportunity. So on the risk side, let's be honest about it, we're not used to spending large amounts of money because we have the amount of money we've had to spend hasn't been as much as perhaps it was some years ago. So there's a big level of investment that's coming into our region that we need to gear up for, we need to tool up for. And of course there is always the challenge of the fact that the combined authority is unlikely to be a direct delivery agent. It will look to the constituent authorities to deliver on its behalf. So the capacity that we have to effectively talk to the combined authority and deliver on its behalf, I think that's a challenge, and one you're absolutely right, Chair. You know, we need to be ready for that. I think the transport funding is a really interesting one. I don't know whether you saw it. I'm still not entirely sure how certain it is, so I will caveat what I'm about to say very carefully so I don't get the Mayor in trouble. But she did make reference to the establishment of a transport authority, for want of a better phrase, to be based in Derby, along with the establishment of Great British Railway. So there is some positive links that will come out of this in terms of as and when the transport arm of the combined authority is established, there is an opportunity for Derby for that to be based in the city because of the links with things like GBR. But I will caveat that and to say I am not saying on behalf of the Mayor that is definitive, because I don't want her coming after me saying that I've said something that I shouldn't. But she did say it publicly, so I'm just repeating what she said. But you're absolutely right, Chair. I mean, if you think about it, 1.5 billion of additional funding for transport schemes, and yes, of course, that will have to be spread around the region, but that is a significant investment, and again, an opportunity for us as a city to take advantage of that. And there's a whole host of things that I'm sure members of this committee can think about as to where they might like that money to be spent. But I think it's really, really important that we do that. Heather's mentioned skills. Sharon is playing a key part in the development of the proposals around that. Tammy likewise on things like economic growth, city centre regeneration. So we are playing our part and making sure that wherever possible those resources come to Derby, because obviously that's what you would expect us to say. But this is a regional body, it's a regional organisation, and we need to ensure that also, where that money is spent, where it's spent strategically, it benefits the region because if it does benefit the region, then intrinsically it should also benefit Derby as well, and Derby residents and Derby businesses. So I think the question that Councillor Mulhall has asked is, you know, we all know it's a risk, but it's also a significant opportunity, and we want to grasp it with both hands.
Thank you. I think part of what prompted Councillor Mulhall's question is speculation, I think, from media that the Mayor's cancelled or considering cancelling various projects around the East Midlands. I don't see where that is applicable, to be honest. I think there are funding streams that will be subject to decisions, but as far as I'm aware, none have been taken as yet, unless I'm otherwise corrected.
If I may, Chair, I'm guessing that may well have come about simply because Heather made the point that the UK shared prosperity funding is being, that will be channelled through the combined authority, and the Chancellor announced in the budget a couple of weeks ago that the UK shared prosperity fund would be reduced. So we will be managing with a reduced level of resource, but it will be managed by the. So I'm only surmising, but I'm surmising that that's where that has come from, because she will have a smaller pot of money to play with. Hence, there will need to be reductions.
The last level of shared prosperity funding, of course, was dealt out and included the boroughs and districts. And maybe some of their projects might be at risk, because I think the current intention is for the combined authority to deal with what is received. But the likes of where it affects us, I understand, are like our Inwood Investment Agency, like Marketing Derby, and how that's funded. So, but that's all yet to be decided, and I think it's a case of watch this space, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm actually really pleased that this is being flagged up, because it is a really crucial thing for everyone to get their heads around, really. The importance of having a pipeline of projects. Yes, the combined authority and the Mayor have got funding, but that will depend on us putting forward projects and bidding for that, and making our case. Having that pipeline of projects, and it will encourage us to think further ahead, to be honest, as well, and encourage long-term thinking over 5-10 years as to how we see our city developing, and then developing projects in the pipeline to put forward for funding to help deliver that. So I'm glad it's flagged up, and hopefully it will, you know, all officers throughout the council will understand this sort of change and the possibilities that are out there in terms of being able to bid for funding through the combined authority in the future.
Okay, yeah, you make good points. I'm sat here thinking, where and how are we going to get, as a city council, feedback on developments within the combined authority? We've got strong representation in Councillor Pete Field and Councillor Hazelgrave, and obviously senior officers in the thing. But where in our mechanisms do we get the opportunity to receive feedback and have a chance to scrutinise what developments are happening? Paul, any thoughts on where we might get that?
Well, I mean, obviously, there are certain members, I think you are one, Chair, who have got roles within the combined authority in terms of the scrutiny of the combined authority. I think it's an interesting question as to how do we play that back into this organisation as to what's happening. There's probably, I mean, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said, you know, the administrative arrangements of the combined authority are still relatively embryonic. They've just appointed a permanent chief exec. I'm sure you've seen that. But they are still in the throes of appointing to the other senior officer posts in the combined authority. So it's still largely an organisation that is that consists of temporary staff, but they are growing. And yes, I mean, I think it's an interesting question as to how do we ensure that what's going on in the combined authority, and the things. So, you know, Martin's point just about that pipeline of projects. What does that look like? How does that get the kind of appropriate scrutiny locally? And you know, where do members in particular get feedback as to what's happened? And that's probably something for us to think about in terms of either doing it through this kind of process, Chair, or perhaps some kind of member bulletin or information in terms of, you know, the things that are going on in the combined authority. It's a good question, and I'll have a think about that.
One area where there have been some decisions taken is ongoing work around brownfield sites, and there are 2 or 3 quite interesting ones in Derby City involved in that not a lot of people will know about. Is there any, I'm going to look at Heather here and Sarah, is there any way we can consider how we might feed some of this highlights and stuff back into the system?
I think if we've reflected, we're looking to obviously refresh the council delivery plan, where we look to align our priorities and ensure that we're monitoring appropriate objectives or priority projects as part of our performance framework. That would be the route through which we would get those established updates as part of the quarterly monitoring reports. If there are new or emerging threats or opportunities that hit our strategic risk register, they'll be captured through that, and as much as possible for our projects, they will still go through all of the assurance activities that they do anyway and be reported as part of the reports. So I think it's just about ensuring we've got that alignment of priorities and we are capturing those key areas as part of our ongoing monitoring, but that will be at a very high level. And we need to think about obviously what that detail looks like, and potentially targeted updates on a thematic basis from lead officers is probably what I would recommend.
I appreciate that, and that would be useful, but I'm just looking at ways of heading off councillor questions and motions in relation to combined authority business if we're not getting information around it from the Councillor Peatfield, Councillor Hazelgrave, yes, Councillor Kerr.
On that point, Chair, I've got 2 suggestions. One is that I think at the moment the EMSA's papers are being hosted on the Derbyshire County Council website. And if we could put a link from our democratic pages through to theirs, so that we could actually quickly you could go onto our website and click through to see what is happening, then it would be easy for people who wanted to find out to look for it and find it, because otherwise it's not obvious. And secondly, I think we know we need to review our constitution, but we could propose that we can have questions to EMSA as part of our agendas for our full council meetings. And that might give an opportunity as well.
There are a number of ways in which people can Google the meetings, Google the papers, ask questions of EMCA and the Scrutiny Board. In fact, and the public can attend both meetings. So I guess it's about who's interested and who needs to know and needs to know basis. Heather.
Yeah, I think we're happy to work with Democratic Services in terms of the councillor bulletin that comes out, in terms of perhaps sort of circulating links to papers and potentially any pertinent updates. I think that might be a good way of just ensuring, we continue to kind of communicate around EMCA issues. I mean, we're doing the same in terms of My News, which is the colleague bulletin as well. So.
I hoped you were going to say something like that, Heather. Thank you. Right. Any other questions for Sarah on the actual report? Yes, Lucy.
Thank you. I've got 4 points. Where have I put my table now? That I wanted to ask about. They're all in the sort of appendices part of the report. The first one's on page 267 because I've got the full set. Are you working off the full set? Okay, this is, I don't know what to call this. This is the second page of the appendix 1, second page of appendix 1. There's a reference to Derby Social Ventures. Can you say a bit more about this organisation that I don't know anything about it?
Lucy, I'm thinking your questions, these 4 items, are going to be quite detailed. Would it be okay with you if you take these offline with Sarah and deal with them? Because I'm conscious of the time. We've been at this hour and a half.
Okay, shall I just
got
say...
a big agenda to go through.
Shall I just say what the other 3 questions are, and you can say what's... Whatever. On the following page, there's a reference to increase of frequency of street cleaning in the inner city areas. And I just wondered whether that has diverted resources from other areas. Into the next document, which is on my page of 282, there's the reference to the South Derby growth zone and the fact that the county council is sort of got problems on delivering that. And I wondered what the implications were to us and the opening up of the land in Derby, and following on the comments we just had about MCA, as to whether this is something that we should be pushing for some additional funding so it can go ahead if it's going to be significant to us. And then a little further on what I call page 306, there is reference to data and records management. And it says it's out of our control at the time of reporting. And I just, again, there's a bit more background information on that one.
Okay, I'm sure Sarah will be able to liaise with you on those points. The growth fund area, yes, investment zones, growth funds are all very high on the MCA's agenda and Derbyshire's as well. So they're all being considered at this moment in time. But I'm sure Sarah will liaise with you on that. So Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to revert back to the agenda as printed and try and move through them as quickly as possible. So we're now on to the full Council Cabinet agenda, and the first one on their agenda that we've not dealt with is Climate Change Action Plan. Andy, I'm guessing that might be you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Andy Hills, Climate Change Manager. Just to whiz you through this report, because I know time's of the essence. We first adopted our first action plan in 2022, which covered the period 2022-24. We've learnt a lot with that during that time in terms of what works, what doesn't work, and the level of ambition we need versus the realities of the financial situation we're in. The big difference with the new action plan is we've come down from 106 actions, which was just totally unrealistic to manage, down to 35 bigger, more strategic actions. So that's the biggest difference between the 2 plans. We've also include scopes 1, 2 and 3, which are the way that we look at carbon emissions. Scopes 1 and 2 are basically about the energy we use and the electricity we use. Scope 3 is about those emissions that are at arm's length from us. So procurement, the things we procure, the services we procure, the items we procure, which dominates our carbon footprint. We've also extended the remit of the plan, not just to look at those things the Council directly controls, but to also focus on the role that we have as a place shaper and an enabler across the city, recognising the fact that we need everybody with us in the city if we're going to take this area seriously. In terms of structure of the new plan, like I said, 35 actions under 4 different themes. Those themes are property, processes, place and people. We can have collective reporting across departments, and we're tying in with a new performance management system in order to do that. And we will also prepare and release at least an annual report yearly on the progress that we're making. We've also homed in on the notion of co-benefits in this report, recognising the fact that there's a lot of positive effects that a policy or measure aimed at one objective might have on other objectives. And that essentially means that carbon reduction is the long-term goal, but reaching that goal, there are other positive influences positive things on the environment, on society and on the economy. So we're really bringing co-benefits more to the front with this new plan. Just moving on very quickly. Just to bring to light a few of the sort of key things that we're doing in the plan. So obviously I'm not going to focus on all 35. We're looking very closely at our property and how we can save energy with the buildings that are going to remain within the council's portfolio to make them more energy efficient. There's a lot of work going on in that area that's reflected in the plan. There's an event kicking off tomorrow, which we're all excited about, which is part of the Derby Promise, where we're working with our colleagues in education to engage young people in this important area. So the primary cohort will be taking over the council tomorrow, which will be good and fun. And the secondaries will be with me at Pride Park. So that's a really good engagement programme that we're running as part of the Derby Promise to enable schools and young and educational establishments to develop their own climate change action plans by the end of 2025. And for that event tomorrow, I think we've engaged something like 25, 30 organisations that are going to be supporting us with that kick-off event tomorrow. In terms of the processes, we are working alongside our MCA local authorities to develop what we call a local area energy plan. And that is basically a master plan that's going to roadmap how we are going to get anywhere near our 2035 zero carbon target by identifying what we've got to do to deliver on that. So it's going to look at the whole energy system in Derby, and it's a data-driven exercise that's going to make sense of all of that and tell us what we need to do. And then finally, the place action. We need to really take into account within this plan and take seriously the whole area of climate change adaptation, which is all about preparing the city for more extreme weather events as and when they're going to hit us, like the catastrophic events that recently took place in southeast Spain, you know, a major flooding incident, and the climate scientists are telling us that more extreme weather events are going to be a more common occurrence in you know, where we live. So adaptation is really important. Just finally, monitoring our progress. The 35 actions contained within our plan will be monitored through the Council's performance management system, as I've just mentioned. This will result in standalone internal report identifying which actions have progressed and which ones require further attention. And I think that's really important when it comes down to coming down to 35 actions as opposed to 106. We can drill down to really scrutinise our progress better. And like I said, we'll also produce an annual report or an annual statement on the progress we're making. So that's it, Chair. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Andy. I think we've all had the opportunity to read the report. Any questions, comments? Councillor Kerr?
Thank you. And I think this is really timely. We've had concerns out from the United Nations, I think just today or yesterday, saying that we really must, as a global society, take this much more seriously and get action moving forward. So this is really, really timely, and I very much welcome it. I think the new format and the tightening up of the areas being targeted is really good. And I think bringing in the co-benefits is also really timely, and is a better way of motivating people to take some of these points forward. Having said that, there are four things that I think I'm a bit concerned about. Sometimes because they're a bit distracting, sometimes because I think we've not got the words quite right, or the purpose, and or that the intention is really good, but the effects of it is not going to be delivered. So there may be things here, Chair, that we might want to feed back to Cabinet, as they're supposed to be approving this. Others may disagree with me, but let me highlight these four things. The first one is fleet decarbonisation, which is talking about using hydrogen vehicles. It's point 4. Now, there isn't an excess of electricity, which is the main way of making green hydrogen. Until we have an excess of green electricity, I don't think we should be moving to hydrogen. And I think this is actually a red herring and not something that we should be tying
Can you list your 4 points for me?
That's the first one. The second point is point 16, which is Derby Sustainability Board. And this is wanting to align the action plan and work of the council with the Sustainability Board's work programme. But we don't know what the Sustainability Board's work programme is. And wouldn't this be better the other way around to say that we want to align the Sustainability Board's work programme with what we're doing and our action plan?
Okay, I think Andy's got the gist of that. Go on, the next one.
The next one is on pension divestment. Now, elsewhere within this document, it highlights that the council has an important role as it plays as a placemaker, influencer and enabler in helping to facilitate positive change. Now, this is what being the holder of assets belonging to companies who aren't yet moving it fast enough. And obviously the United Nations was pushing for the business sector to be acting on this and not just the public sector and governments. What the pension fund does is influence, and it works with other holders of assets to push forward in terms of movement away from climate change and emissions.
So pension fund investment is a subject where you can directly take that to the pension fund, can't you?
But if we divest from assets which have an element of climate movement in them, of climate problem making of fossil fuels and the like, we lose the opportunity to influence. We are not able to start voting for better people onto their boards. We're not able to put pressure on them in terms of what they are prioritising. If we want to have influence, we need to have organisations that will pressure the investment community to move forward. If we divest, we lose that influence. And one of the things we have said we want to do is be an influencer.
Point well made.
If we want to be an influencer, we have to be at the table. And the other one is about regeneration. And here my ask is to actually be bolder and change the angle. At the moment, this is point 28, it says ensuring new build developments meet the latest energy efficiency standards and address the impacts of extreme weather events. Well, the latest energy efficiency standards are not zero carbon. So if we build to something which is not zero carbon, we're not helping us achieve zero carbon in 2035. If we want to be zero carbon in 25, what we need to aim for is zero carbon at the concept stage of a project. So rather
Lucy, can I just remind you that these plans, as far as I'm aware, are designed to get the city council to a point in time, and not to try and address world climate change issues directly. We're looking at Derby City Council here and what we need to do to be able to achieve our goals in that respect. So
if
we shouldn't get distracted.
I don't think we're being distracted, Chair. If we are going to spend a large money on a new development, a capital development, then we need to be making sure that that is ready for our 2035 target. And if we only build to the latest energy efficiency standards, we won't be there. But if we aim for zero carbon at the concept stage of a project, it can be designed, and the additional cost from some training I did last month on this is approximately 0.5% of cost. If we have to retrofit, the cost may be 40% higher.
Is this not the reason why we have in a section in each and every report where we need to consider climate change issues?
They need to be considered much earlier on. They need to be, if you're going to build a school, and occasionally we build schools, if we're going to build a school or even a set of classrooms, as we have going through later on this agenda, if we at this point say we want it to be zero carbon because we know 2035 is only 10 years away, then the additional cost of achieving that is going to be about 0.5% of the total cost. If we go for a lesser standard, such as the latest energy efficiency standards, we will have to do, or the operators of that building will have to do additional work to achieve zero carbon for 2035. And that additional cost may be up to 40% additional cost on the initial build.
Okay.
Concept
can I ask Andy, have you made it, you've got a note, an idea on these 4 issues that you could perhaps take up with Councillor Kerr
yes,
following
Chair.
this meeting?
Yes.
And go into some detail. You can bring it into your other formats as well, can't you? Your other meetings that you take on. I'm going to have to move on, I think, in relation to that. Can I just pose one question of you, Andy? We have a dedicated fund, a fund that was set aside. Any major changes in how it's spent, or what's the current balance, or any plans to how to spend that?
No, we've got funding remaining, but we have got projects in the pipeline that have been slow to come forward, including one to replace all the lighting to LEDs in this building, which should be landing very soon. So there are projects, and there have also been projects that have been put through to the panel that have just not, they have not met the criteria in terms of bang for buck with funding versus carbon savings. So there have been projects that have been, you know,
so those criteria are often a problem.
Yeah, it is.
Do you know off the top of your head what the level of funding left is?
I think it's about 2 million in total.
So it's been in place for a fair while.
Yes,
and there's not
it
made
has.
much progress with it at all.
No, it's been a slow burner, Chair.
Okay. Right. Lucy, I note your comments in relation to welcoming the co-benefits and the reduction to 35 headlines, 35 actions. For me, there are some dangers there, some risks there as well, because 35 is probably enough to things to focus on, but 106 meant a completely comprehensive way of looking at it from the council's point of view. And actually, looking at co-benefits is fine, but again, I wouldn't want it to lose focus on what's trying to be achieved in the plan, in that we're trying to make the city council more climate change aware and reach our own ambitions. So for me, there are some dangers, but that's really comment, Andy, for you to take away from my point of view. Okay, thank you. Moving on then, because we've got 17 or 18 items, we'll move to 10. And again, the SEND alternative provision and capital programme. Gamal, sorry, it's yourself, isn't it? We've all had a chance to read the report. I think the main thrust of this is in relation to the provision which we'll be dealing with later on in terms of the spend and the outcome of the negotiations on something else elsewhere. I'm going to throw it open, if you don't mind, for questions from anybody in relation to the content of the report. In that case, can I just I note the 5 or 6 extra provisions being made and the involvement of 2 different trusts, a personal basis. Can I ask one in relation to Odyssey Trust and Springfield School? I see there's a plan for an extended classroom to help them deal with more. Are they considering, or have they considered the planning permission necessary for that, with the location of the school and the amount of the grounds of the school that's already been used?
There we go. Thank you, Chair. Sharon Bookby, Director of Learning, Inclusion and Skills. Yes, we've put together a strategic approach with regards to planning, so are working with our planning colleagues on all the key areas where we will need planning applications. That one, along with ones coming forward in January, February, will also require planning. So, and the discussion of the new purchase will also require planning.
Sorry, I just realised I've sort of jumped there a little bit into item 10, haven't I? So, in relation to that extra provision, because item 9 deals with the provision at Kingsmead and the closure of Mark Eaton's provision as well, doesn't it? So I'm going to ask for any questions or comments in relation to item 9 or 10. Lucy.
In relation to item 10, which we've got a significant amount of money being spent on, I'm not sure of the status of the various groups, this respect collaboration. I don't know if they count as an academy or what, but they sound as though they're not quite Derby City Council. Who owns the new assets that have been bought and built?
I think I read it's 100% City Council, but by all means, Sharon, if you want to clarify.
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. The Respect Collaboration of Schools are indeed local authority maintained schools, and the asset will be fully owned by the council.
Okay, any other questions on 9 or 10 before we move on? No? Thank you. Unless I say otherwise, I think we're resolved to note the reports, Stephen. So, moves us on to Barlow Street and the proposed development there again, which we've got an item in the late in the agenda in relation to the confidential matters. We've all seen the report on that. Anything officers want to add to that at this point?
No, I can go through the detail and confidential.
We'll deal with it under confidential. Okay, good. I'm thinking there may be a few more questions in relation to the leisure facility operator project and the next steps. So is that you, Wayne? Oh, Tammy.
Yeah, Tammy Whitaker, Director of City Growth and Vibrancy. So the main thrust of the report is to consider a procurement process to secure an external operator for the council's leisure facilities. This follows some work undertaken by external leisure consultants who've advised on a range of different operating models for the council's leisure facilities, given the pressures around the council's financial position and the need to secure the most optimal operating model. Based on that information, a number of options were considered, including retaining the existing in-house model, a public service mutual, outsourcing to a CIC type agency such as Everyone Active, who operate more ways, and outsourcing to a private partner, with the ultimate aim of ensuring that the leisure facilities in Derby offer the best service given current resources. The analysis of that information determined that a range of savings could be made on the current operation model. At this point in time, the exact amount of that is to be confirmed depending on the route that's chosen and the procurement process. So the recommendation is to enter into a procurement process to look at outsourcing the leisure provision for a number of the council's assets. There are a number of points of detail that will need to be covered throughout that procurement process, including understanding, depending on the appetite from potential operators, ensuring that we safeguard the community engagement and offer, looking at things like libraries within the Springwood Leisure Centre, considering FM services like cleaning, and the implications for staff and the opportunity, or certainly it's our understanding that majority of staff will be TUPE'd across to any outsourced provision. The proposed procurement route is via a kind of pre-qualification method and then a competitive procedure with negotiation, which will allow us to test some of the models and services. The exact nature of the lots that will go out to procurement is yet to be determined in discussion with external leisure operators. It's quite a complex and specialist process, and that's why we need some additional external resource through leisure expertise and legal advice. and there are a number of things we'll need to think about as we go through the procurement process, but the detail of how that will be looked at is set out in the Cabinet report. I think I'll leave it there and take any questions, if that's okay.
Thank you, Tammy. I think we can take it that the members have had a chance to see the report and read it. And I don't take it personally. I don't take an issue with the proposal and the idea of going out to look at a private operator for leisure services. Where I do take issue with is the recommendation in relation to delegations, and that seems to me to delegate responsibility going forward to senior officers and the cabinet member to make the appropriate decisions. You've already described it as a complex issue and the need to go out to procurement and consider a number of potential leisure operators. For me, similar to the libraries, at the point when we reach preferred bidder and the preferred bidders put a business case in, and I'd suggest that would need to come back to scrutiny and to Cabinet for approval, whereas the current delegation doesn't seem to allow that provision.
I would suggest it's probably a recommendation for Executive Scrutiny Board to make if they wish to change delegations, Chair.
You're reading my mind, but I thought I'd seek the officers' views on it before we did that.
If it helps committee, I believe that the delegations are entirely appropriate, but obviously it is for Executive Scrutiny to make a recommendation if they wish.
Okay. Thank you, I think. Any other comments, questions on this proposal? Yes, Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Tammy and Wayne, of course, as well, for the report and for the meeting that we held before today as well. Really appreciated the information you provided to me there. A bit like yourself, Chair, I'm cautiously supportive of what we've got in front of us. I do support the council going out to the private sector and seeing what's out there, seeing what offers come through, seeing whether, how and if the private sector can run the day-to-day elements of these leisure offers in a better way than we can. But I think it's absolutely crucial that the council keeps on the table the ability and the option not to progress with this if the offers are wrong, if the offers are counterproductive, and especially if the offers will mean a worse leisure offer for the residents and for the people of Derby. I think we've got to keep that reserve option there. We've got to keep that on the table. Now, I know we've got cost pressures, as every authority does, but in noting that the cost savings previously attributed to this project have been achieved through other actions, and huge credit has to go for the fact that that's something that's been able to happen. Hopefully this gives us a bit of leeway to be able to say to potential deliverers of this that we aren't desperate for somebody to take these on. You can't exploit our financial position in any way to get a deal that's not right for us and not right for the residents of Derby, that we want the best offers only, and that we'll walk away if the offers are not what we want. Hopefully that's the approach we're going to take. And that approach to me would make sense, because you look at the velodrome really in Derby Arena in the same way that we can look at Moorways Swimming Pool and Sports Village. There were always questions around whether the council was the best possible operator for a swimming pool and a sports village, with all the marketing and everything that goes into the day-to-day of delivering that. I think those questions come again with the velodrome. The velodrome, if anything, is probably more niche than the swimming pool and the sports village would be. So I think it's sensible that we go out there and see if there are specialised operators in a position to deliver that. Springwood Leisure Centre for me is slightly different, and I would say that considering it's in my ward, but it isn't as niche, I think, as a velodrome or catering service or the swimming pool, but we still need to ensure that it's being run in the best possible way. And this process being embarked on here is a way that the council can do that, so I don't oppose the council embarking on this. But Councillor Mulhall, Councillor Trella and myself as Oakwood Ward councillors have asked residents for their thoughts on this after the Derbyshire Live article that was done, and 3 areas of concern came up amongst the residents that spoke to us about it, which I'll quickly highlight. I highlighted with Wayne and Tammy as well, and hopefully as ward councillors we'll get to keep highlighting and influencing this throughout this process. So the first one, already alluded to really, is the library. So Springwood Library, Oakwood's only library, is inside the leisure centre. It's not the most popular library in the city, but it's a vital resource for those people who do use it. But if I was a private operator looking at running this, I don't think they'll look at the library as the best possible use of space from their perspective. I don't think it's the thing that gets the maximum people through the doors or makes the maximum profit, but that shouldn't mean that the library service is as a result lost. Now, the library is not open every day, and I'd love to see that space used even more when the library is not open, so perhaps a shared space agreement could be used to maximise the potential usage, perhaps a book cafe, perhaps something else. It's something that we can work with the new library operator, with the new leisure operator, with the council, and with other partners and ward councillors would very, very willingly partake in this. But I hope officers can give some assurances or some guarantees that some preservation of the book offer can be looked at being included in any agreements that are signed. The second concern was the leisure centre car park. Now, the car park is at the leisure centre, but not just used for leisure centre. It's used for school parking. It's the reason that the school parking issues at Parkview Primary School are minimal. It's used for visiting Oakwood Park. I use that for that today. It's used for voting when all 3 polling stations are at that site. It's used for visiting the children's centre, and I bumped into somebody today using the car park for that purpose. It's used for visiting the library. We used it to park in when we were putting the poppies up. So it's got an array of uses, and if a charge or limit or restriction were placed on that car park, the havoc it would cause for our residents, especially on Springwood Drive, Silverburn Drive and others, would be immense. We'd have parking issues like we haven't had before in our ward. So I'd ask officers again to ensure that this is something that's properly considered. If they've gotten wrong, it will be catastrophic for the residents living around it. And the final large concern that came is around cost of membership. So costs really can go 3 ways. They can stay the same, they could go down through doing this, and there are privately run gyms around the area offering cheaper prices than Springwood currently does, or they can go up, and there are facilities offering higher costs and some drastically higher costs. There's a lot of concern among residents around a drastic price hike that could price people out of using their local service. Now, I know we can retain some control over costings. It would be interesting to hear officers' comments on that. 2 other small concerns which I've already raised with Tammy and Wayne, so I won't go into detail much, would be around the future operator having continued involvement in the community and for the future of staff around the centre, but I was happy with the answers I received from Tammy and Wayne on those, and I don't think they need to be deliberated here, really. So those are the concerns I wanted to raise on behalf of the residents that have been in touch with myself, with Councillor Mulhall and Councillor Trella. But we're not unsupportive of the council seeking to go down this route, provided that option to walk away if the offers are not what we want remains something that we have. So with that said, Chair, I just asked officers really if any assurances can be given around the library, the car park and costs, and also if you could just outline for us and for the residents that are in contact with us, how exactly is it that operating this facility in-house can be more expensive than a private operator running it day to day? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Ed, for your questions. In terms of the library, I'll start with that, is as part of the, I suppose the tender information would be our base starting point, is we would look to include the library offer as part of that, that it would need to, library/book offer in some way would need to be retained at Springwood. And I think as part of that would then be putting that out to the operators out there and how would they look to use that space, how would they look to work with the library operator there to maximise it, both 1, when it's in use, but 2, when it isn't, and how can they work together to actually bring more people in to use 1, Springwood Leisure Centre, but 2, that book offer, that book space, potentially in a different way. So I think we would look to protect it in that way. In terms of car park, probably in a very similar way, is the car park would be redlined within the operational demise of the new operator coming in. And again, as part of that, we would just detail the use of that car park, that it does play as the centre and the library does a sort of vital part of the Oakwood community, and we'd look to, again, to protect that in a similar way. I think it's probably too small to put a charge on there, and I think that would have a detrimental effect, not just on the residents, but on customers using the facility. And pricing, I think, again, we'd look to probably follow a similar route to what we did with Moorways Sports Centre. and Sports Village in terms of their contract for consistency. There was a number of prices that we set as core prices. One was health and fitness membership, and for Moorways, the others were swimming. And it would make sense to look at including health and fitness in the same way as for this tender process. So again, we've got a consistency across there. And just for members, the core prices are prices that we set at the outset, can be changed by the operator, but it has to be in conjunction with itself, and we have to agree those. In terms of the other prices, again, while the operator may be free to set those, again, we will put limits around those as we did with Moorways, in that they have to provide concessionary schemes, and again, through that contract, while they can set those prices, we ask to see those and review them through the contract monitoring process. And again, if they look out of sync with what we would expect to see if we were managing those facilities, we will challenge that, ask for benchmarking, and then agree a way forward. And one of the key things we did as part of the Moorways price tender, which again we can look to do with this, is as part of their submission, they provide their first year pricing. So again, we can benchmark that and check that it's right. That gives Oakwood residents, Derby Arena customers and the wider community sort of some comfort that on day one prices aren't going to substantially increase, and then we can move that forward.
Okay, thank you. I think the questions that Councillor Ayres posed there and the public will pose is symptomatic of the need for scrutiny review of this and consideration by Cabinet at the appropriate point, in that it is too complicated, it's too detailed and too complicated basically to go, because at 2.2 in the recommendations it says the director of the directors and the cabinet member to take all necessary decisions and actions to procure an operator, enter into all necessary legal agreements to secure operation of facilities, of all these facilities, by an external operator. That's a complete carte blanche for officers and for the cabinet member to answer all these questions that are going to come up through, I presume, some form of consultation as well. So I will be recommending some sort of recommendation to cabinet. Lucy, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I very much support that, Chair, because I was also unhappy that my concern was not just the amount of handover of responsibility. And I think, Chair, I think the point that you and Matt also made about the expectation that this will deliver an external operator is really important, because this doesn't just say do it if it's sensible. This says do it, and I don't want it done if it isn't sensible. And I think that is really important. But my other point on this one that I didn't like was this refers to an external operator, and the options given later in the paper talk about 3 options, lot 1, lot 2 and lot 3, depending on how the different venues are split. And I actually think we could split it further than that, because I would like to think that if there is a local community group who wanted to run one of the cafes in the park, whether it's at Mark Eaton or Elveston or wherever, then to actually have a local group, a voluntary group, maybe it could be a group that is supporting vulnerable people or doing some training alongside it within our communities. We should be enabling that to happen. And they may not want to run a suite of different catering opportunities in different areas. So I would like to take those all as individual items, and if somebody wishes to bid for more than one of them, that would be fine. And they might bid conditionally to say that either we want all of these or we want none of them, or we want up to 3 of them or whatever. And I think that would be an important aspect of the procurement process as well.
I agree. There's a lot of unknowns in here, nothing that we can endorse or agree at this point. So, any other questions or points before I try and put together a recommendation. Stephen, have you got your pen handy? So, recommendation 2.2.
Excuse me, Chair. I'd just like to come back on that point. So the report does actually refer to our ability to look at splitting the lot sizes up, so we can do exactly that and look at where a bidder would like to look at, you know, whether it's just the cafe or the whole lot. That's part of the procurement process. I'd also like to reassure colleagues that we will be looking very closely at whether this delivers a saving to the council or not, because in the analysis that we did, the in-house team actually performed really well, and it was quite close in terms of our analysis of the outsourced option. So if that's not the right option when we go through the procurement process, we will be scrutinising that quite carefully and making sure that we've got the right mix.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. I get that. But I also get that the report allows different options, none of which decisions have been made about. So, was to endorse it for Cabinet to be able to endorse or agree it tomorrow or on Wednesday is a non-sustainable position in my view. So hopefully Steve's come up with the makings of a resolution. So I'll read it out and then we can talk about it. The Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to recommend to Council Cabinet that when the preferred bidder has been identified and a report should be brought back to Council Cabinet to allow for scrutiny by the Executive Scrutiny Board before delegating authority to the Strategic Director for Place as outlined in 2.1 to procure the operator. In principle, I think is okay. It identifies the point in the process whereby the preferred bidder has been identified. Over and above that, there's the important thing. An important aspect is the business case. But I would hope that it would be something as we've done with other similar projects. There could be regular updates brought, maybe to the relevant scrutiny board or wherever, because it is complicated. You're not going to do it overnight, are you? You're not going to be sorting this out overnight. And that carte blanche delegation is worrying for me. So is that the wording of that okay in principle, if I fine-tune it with Stephen? Yes, Lucy.
Could we add something in about the ensuring that there are broad options enabled for bidding, rather than the lots 1, 2 and 3 which were referenced in the paper? I can't find the page now.
So maybe we could deal with that right where it says about
A, B and C. It's paragraph 4.94.
Okay.
Examples could be, it says.
So Stephen and I will look at that and see if we can incorporate that into the recommendation. But the principle of the recommendation is to ask Cabinet to, in terms of delegations, to bring it back to Cabinet and therefore scrutiny prior to finalising, as it says here, all the necessary legal arrangements to secure an operator. So prior to that section, yes.
I think if I'm right, Chair, we're essentially asking what we asked about the library's EOI, which is that before a final bidder is agreed, we receive a paper, this time with the name of the people on it, to tell us that this is the approach that Cabinet wants to take, and just allows us as Exec Scrutiny that last opportunity to scrutinise it. I'd be very happy with that.
I'm not sure why this deviates from that process, to be honest, but yeah, it's something that's going to create a lot of interest. And Tammy, can you just clarify for me what it says in relation to consultations on the various sites? The reason I asked Tammy is if there's that level of interest in relation to Springwood Leisure, then there's going to be an awful lot of interest in relation to the arena itself and potentially conflicts in the types of operations that are carried out at the arena, like the Panto, and in conflict with other entertainment venues in the city and things. So what consultations are actually planned?
Yeah, that's something that we'll be considering throughout the procurement process, but and what that process entails. But essentially, I mean, it's set out in paragraph 5.3, where it says we'll undertake stakeholder engagement, and it should say, you know, we will do community engagement too. But essentially, we're drawing up a stakeholder communications plan and a community consultation plan. But it's really important that we engage, you know, both the national governing bodies, but also some of those key community groups that use the facilities. And we absolutely acknowledge that. I know it's a discussion we've had today.
I would suggest that exactly that is an aspect which a scrutiny board could consider in terms of the methodology in relation to stakeholders and community engagement, because otherwise you're just going to get swallowed by the amount of interest that comes into it. Okay, Steve and I will work on the fine-tuning that recommendation and circulate to you before Cabinet. Is that agreed in principle that it's a sensible course of action? Those in favour? Yeah, okay, good, we can agree that, and we'll circulate that. Thank you, Ryan, thank you, Tammy.
Chair, just very quickly before we move on, I think you touched on one other question I'd just like to ask, which is around the time component for this. What are we thinking in terms of the time component for this? When would a kind of ideal completion date be?
I think based on the previous experience with Moorways, we were saying 18 months.
18 months. And, yeah, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on then, item 13, the budget and policy framework. Can I say, I know I can see you all sat there with your coats on and things, and Councillor Wright's been and fetched her gloves as well and a coat because it's not that much warmer. Can we assume that we have seen and sort out some details in the reports? So if we could. Tony, if we could limit the input that you need to give us headlines and on reserves and deficits and overspends, and just a very quick summary. Thank you.
So, unfortunately, Alison's given her apologies, so I'll just take you through a brief summary of this report, if that's okay, Chair. So, the first one's the Q2 report. And as you all know, councils are facing significant pressures, and Derby's no exception. I won't take you through the issues. Despite best efforts, at the end of Q2, we're predicting an overspend of 8.95 million for this financial year. This is a reduction from Q1 of 680,000, but we need to continue to take action to try and balance this budget by year end. Just for information, the largest overspending areas are adult social care pressures due to increased care costs. That's around 17 million. Children's placement pressures of around 3.4 million. Homelessness and B&B charges from the use of temporary accommodation of £890,000 and housing benefit subsidy loss of 3.380 million. So that's no different to Q1, but the figures are slightly changed, same issues. Again, for illustration, the report uses reserves to balance the position to demonstrate that we can, but we need to carry on in the final 2 quarters of this financial year to try and mitigate this position and alleviate any impact on reserves. Just for information, we've updated this report and added a new appendix at table 5. We think it gives a bit better management information, and if you have a look at it and give us, I'd appreciate any feedback on that. On a more positive note, 100% of the Council's 24-25 £8.121 million savings target is forecast to be achieved. Though in some cases there have been some mitigations identified. And again, if you look at section 4.1.9 of this report, it gives an update on this, including details on AI savings updates, which we know that you'll be interested in. Capital expenditure to date is currently 76 million, and our estimated forecast spend is 207 million at the year end. The main variants of the capital programme are outlined in detail at Appendix 2. HRA is budgeted to contribute 650,000 to the HRA reserve in 24-25, which is on track. The DSG is forecasting a reduction in the in-year deficit of 1.856 million, which is good news, resulting in a 6.767 million 24-25 in-year deficit. That takes some getting out. And just finally, can I draw your attention to Appendix 7, because that gives you a position statement on the Treasury Management activity for the Council and its compliance with the prudential indicators at Q2. So if you've missed that in the appendix, please just go and have a look at that. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tony. I think we will need to read the reports in a little bit more detail, and the slight amendments could be useful. I think safe to say, other than safe to say that it's an extremely concerning position that we find ourselves in, I think it's a developing situation, the budget is. We don't absolutely know what central government's decisions have been and what that ramifications are that for us at this point. There will be a number of opportunities to go into this in more detail when more is known about the current position and how the savings and things work their way through. So I'm going to open it out for questions. Councillor Kerr.
3 questions. They're all on the appendices. The first one is on, I don't know what appendix it is. It's page 205, and it's the Highways Vehicle and Plant Equipment Capital Spend. Slippage for the gully vehicle, waiting a decision on bespoke specifications. We would love to have another gully vehicle. I'm told that the other one is actually off the road at the moment and we're having to hire something. I don't expect there's an answer now, but I expect other people will also think it's important.
We might have to see what the budget proposals bring at the end of the day. You see somewhere along those lines.
Secondly, 2 questions on the Treasury one. One is that the percentage of it's paragraph 1.8, the proportion of financing costs to net revenue stream. So this is how much interest we're paying on our borrowing, and it's currently 5% and predicted to go up to 9% by 25-26. I know it's 6% now, expected to go up to 9%. Is there a SIPFA recommended figure that we should be under for that? And my final point is, with the amount of funding going into money markets has gone up really significantly in whichever table that is, on 4.37, up from 7.8 million to 39.5 million. And I just wondered what that was about.
Okay. Any brief feedback on those 3 points, Tony? Before, and otherwise you can feed it back directly. Take that offline.
Yeah, I'll take that offline and give you all some detailed feedback to those responses. But yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
We won't take
Good. So, in relation to item 13, then, I think it's fair to say that we note the report, but with some grave or serious concerns as to the budget going forward. Grave? We can agree grave? Okay. All right with that, Stephen? Okay. So do you want to deal with the medium-term financial strategy then?
So the MTFS provides the strategic financial framework for the council, and as you know, all councils must set a legally balanced budget, and this report outlines the strategy to help achieve this. You'll all be aware that long-term planning is challenging at the moment, given some of the uncertainties that are affecting the councils. For instance, one-year grant allocations, financial settlements for local government, economic turbulence, including inflation, and the cost of unforeseen local, national and global events. So the time frame considered for this strategy is 3 years, as it gives a good balance between long-term financial planning and having realistic assumptions to be able to work with. The Chancellor announced in the autumn statement some updates. Core spending power is going to increase by 3.2% in real terms, and the headlines for this for the local government are that there's going to be 1.3 billion additional grant funding, 600 million increase for social care, and further 700 million for other. There's going to be additional 230 million grant for homelessness, 1 billion for special education needs and disabilities, and 86 million for disabled facilities grant. All good news, but the distribution of this additional funding will not be confirmed until the local government finance settlement in late December, which is an issue. Uncertainty is one of the biggest concerns for the sector at the present time. Single-year settlements prevent local authorities from accurately planning spend for future years. So, that's the next one. Sorry. The main issues facing Derby have been outlined in the report and in quarter two, so I won't go through them in the meeting. But the MTFS looks at the medium-term financial strategy, and within that it interlinks with the savings strategy, the capital strategy, reserves, council tax, and treasury management strategy, which are all outlined in the report. This leads down to the latest gap in the MTFP as outlined in the report, and it's showing a gap of 21.879 million for 25-26. So this takes the existing gap at the time of the budget setting, which was 13.955 million, reviews existing savings and pressures and identifies new pressures, and adds in our assumptions for funding. What it does not at this stage put in is any new savings to mitigate that gap, and this will be considered as appropriate with members as we work through the process. So the next part of the report, most of the heavy lifting has been done by Heather, because it talks about our delivery board and how that's continuing to help our MTFP and the MTFS, so I won't go through that again, Chair, if that's okay. So finally, the risks to consider are outlined in Appendix 1 of the report. This list is not exhaustive, but it gives the context to the MTFS. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. So I think it's fair to say there are a lot of unknowns still in terms of the future financial strategy. Again, developing during the course of the budget considerations and until December and the budget actual meeting in January or whenever it is. And another consideration, of course, is whilst there's some good news in terms of extra funding for various things, there are also other announcements that are going to cause the council probably equal amounts of extra costs. The living wage and the national insurance thing as well is going to probably almost outbalance them, but we don't know the detail yet. So are there any direct questions in relation to the strategy? I think it's fair to say we note the reports, but we note them again with grave concern as to the gaps in the future years funding gaps, because there's no plan currently to address those gaps. So, all right with that, Stephen? Yeah? Any other questions? Thank you, Tony. Not got your gloves on yet, but we'll be able to go and thaw out in a little while. Yes, Paul.
Sorry, Chair, I'm probably picking at hairs here, but just for the committee's reassurance, I don't know whether when you said there are no plans to address the gaps, as in the government's got no plan, or the council hasn't got any plan, but just for the reassurance of the committee, we are obviously working on closing that gap. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Chair.
Probably a poor choice of words in relation to no, but maybe insufficient at this point, shall we say. Work in progress, yes, as it always is in these scenarios, but yes, thank you for the point. Good, okay, well, we're catching up a little bit. We've dealt with item 15, so it falls, because we have got some confidential items for me to seek the resolution that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 that the press and public be excluded from the meeting during the discussion of the following items on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. That concludes the public section of the meeting, I believe.